Hello everybody, welcome to Gussied Up. Today I want to teach you something that is probably a classic recipe in our house. I make it at least once a month. It's really my go-to chocolate cake. It's very classic. It's a one bowl recipe, which means that you don't have to get out your mixer. You don't even need a hand mixer. This is all just done by the strength of your biceps and that's it. It's so easy. It really makes you never want to use a box cake again, although there's no shame in a box cake. So if you're only going to make a box cake, do that. But if you are wanting to venture forward and try a from scratch chocolate cake recipe, this is the one for you. Let's get started. Begin by setting your preheating your oven to 350 degrees. That's just standard. You know, if you go down to 325, it'll probably still work. 375. The inside will be a little gooey and the top will be a little bit crunchy. But if you had to do it, you could do it, but 350 is best. 1.5 cups of AP flour, that's just all-purpose flour. We're gonna add in 1.5 cups of granulated sugar. Then we're gonna add in 3/4 cup of cocoa powder. This is unsweetened. Man, as a little kid, I remember I would always try and taste cocoa powder, and it is so bitter and so disappointing as a child. But when you add it with all that sugar that we just added, it tastes delicious. Cocoa powder inside of recipes act as a dryer. It kind of acts almost like flour. And so if you ever want to add cocoa powder to a yellow cake recipe or a white cake recipe, you're going to need to reduce some of the flour from that. Then we're going to add in some baking powder, baking soda, and salt. We need to do the baking powder and baking soda because this recipe uses buttermilk. So we need to make sure that buttermilk is acidic. We need the baking soda to kind of balance out that acidity. So 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda, 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder, and 3/4 teaspoon of fine salt. Okay, man, all those little bowls. Like a billion little bowls to show you the recipe. Now, I whisk this. You can 100%, if you want, sift this all together, but usually whisking it's gonna be fine. The only thing you kind of wanna pay attention to is making sure there's no flour clumps and making sure there's no chocolate clumps. That's why I'm doing this with a whisk. You're aerating it right now, right? And you'll see, aerate it for a minute. You're never gonna get a tough cake because while it's dry, you've mixed it too much. It's only once you add liquid to flour that you can get toughness. So feel free to go crazy with your whisking to make sure everything's well incorporated. Look at that. This cake is delicious with any kind of frosting that you want. Today I'm gonna put some chocolate frosting on there, but it would be delicious with cheesecake frosting or a traditional classic vanilla buttercream. German chocolate icing would be outstanding on this. Caramel icing, yes. That kind of 7-minute classic fudgy chocolate icing would also be delicious. You could also just serve this up with whipped cream and some berries if you want a strawberry shortcake vibe, but with chocolate, you know? Okay, so that's all whisked together. Now, we can add in our wet ingredients, and those just kind of all go in together. So it's 2 eggs at room temperature. Whoopsie daisy, get that out of there. No biggie. 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. 1.5 cups of buttermilk. This is full fat buttermilk. If you can't find the full fat, you can use the low fat. Just add in an extra tablespoon of oil. Buttermilk's so thick. I always want to scrape the container, right? That's gonna make it kind of tangy. And then we're also gonna add in a teaspoon of vanilla. You can get crazy with the vanilla too. You can also add in a little bit more. You can go 2 or 3 teaspoons of vanilla. You could add in coffee extract if you wanted to make this taste like mocha. You could also add in almond if you want a chocolate almond flavor, or coconut extract inside of this is very delicious. You can kind of play with the extracts to make it what you want, but classically you're just gonna add in vanilla extract. And you see, you just stir it. It's just really not a difficult cake at all to make. If you want this to be like midnight chocolatey looking, you can get that cocoa powder that's black, right? The cocoa powder that is like deep, deep, deep black. I forget the name right now, but you know what I'm talking about. And that'll make this like a midnight chocolate cake. But you can also just use the regular cocoa powder that you find at your grocery store, and it works just fine. Well, that's it. That's what it takes to make it, right? That's why I love it so much. That's why it almost like, it's like almost just as easy as making a cake mix. Like, I understand why we want to use cake mixes, because 1, they're moist, they're delicious, and 2, moist, 2, they're delicious, and 3, you don't have to get out your mixer, whatever. But this is that same thing. You just put it in a bowl and mix. Now, I'm gonna line my cake pans. You can use an 8 or a 9-inch cake pan for this. 8 inches will be a little bit thicker, a 9-inch will be a little thinner. Spray them down with some cooking spray, and then line them with parchment paper. So I cut out parchment rounds, and I just do that by like setting my pan on parchment paper. I draw a circle, and then I cut out around that. So it'll fit down into the bottom of your pan. And it's okay if it doesn't go all the way to the edge. What you really want to do is make sure that the center is not going to stick, right? So you don't want the parchment paper like popping up and going up on the sides. You really want it to stay in the bottom. And this is going to make sure that your cakes never, ever, 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 ever stick. Now, divide your cake. You can weigh this if you want to. Like, if you put your 2 pans on a scale, you could weigh out to make sure you have exactly the same amount of batter per cake, so that you know your layers are perfectly even. Or you can eyeball it, either way. This also works as a cupcake recipe. This also works in a sheet cake. This works as a 9x13, and I think it makes 18 cupcakes. That's what I want to say. I want to say this recipe will make 18 cupcakes. If I got that wrong, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for trying it. Maybe it's 12. No, I think it's 18. I'm almost positive it's 18. And it's thick enough that it works for cupcakes, right? You do want to use a portion scoop for those. And then you just kind of encourage the batter out to the edges, because it's always going to cook from the edges out, and that's what creates doming, is like it cooks from outside out, the outside in, and it kind of pushes up, and so that's why you get a dome. If you get a lot of doming with your cakes, it's because your oven's too hot. So just turn your oven down a little bit. Okay? But see how I like encourage the edges to be a little bit, like just a little bit thicker. Bake these in a 350-degree oven for 30 to 35 minutes until the center is just set. That is the sound of time passing and a cleaning fairy coming in. Dun da da da. The cakes are done and they're cooled. Just because I don't want you all to have to wait, I have a little swap. So these are the cakes. Look at it. It will dome up a little bit, but I pull them out and let them cool. Okay. So now I'm just gonna go straight onto my pan. All right, and I do that by putting my normal size plate on the top and flipping it. I gave it a little wiggle. You saw that, but it came right out. Now, if you are not going to level your cake, all the time it'll tell you to level the cake, and that means that I'm gonna have to show you. Let me grab another plate. Hold, please. Wow, just clinking all around. Okay, so this has a dome to it. Can you see that? When you level a cake, you come into the edge and you cut off that whole top that's like domed. It has like a little roundness to it. You can press that down when it's hot a little bit to get rid of some of the doming, but if you don't want to lose all that cake, the way to ice this and the way to make it look the best is to put your 2 flat ends together. So you originally, on the bottom, you put your first dome part. Then you're gonna lift off that parchment. See how helpful that parchment is? Now we're gonna put on some icing. This is just a very classic chocolate buttercream. nice and fudgy. This is my fudgy buttercream. So similar to a chocolate buttercream, but it's like a cooked fudge. This is my fudgy buttercream. I just put a layer in between and encourage it to go to the edges. I'm not using a cake spinner or anything, right? I'm just using my hands and moving a little bit. Now, this next one, this is the hard part, okay? We need the dome part to be on the top. So I'm gonna flip them out onto my, I flipped them out, and then what we do is we take off this bottom piece, we take off the paper, and then we put this flat piece against the other flat piece so that you don't end up with like these weird lumps that are trying to line up, and that's what makes it feel wonkadoodle, right? It's what makes it feel non-stable. And we come in with a little bit more of our buttercream. And you wanna, like when you're icing, you wanna frost outward. You wanna be pushing the icing, not pulling the icing. You can use whatever icing you want on this, right? Like this is just a delicious cake, but I feel like if you're doing a chocolate cake and showing somebody chocolate cake for the first time, you gotta show them it made with a chocolate icing. But maybe you don't like that. Maybe you like vanilla icing on your chocolate cake. I don't know. I do like a chocolate cake with vanilla icing. I also love a yellow cake with chocolate icing, right? Ooh, I'll have to show you all my yellow cake recipe soon. Yellow cake is it's a hard one to perfect. Once you find that recipe that makes a delicious from scratch yellow cake, you just save it for the rest of your life, because it will come in handy for every birthday from here until the end of time. Now I'm just icing the sides. I'm putting a little bit of this on there and just kind of like pressing. And it kind of like, especially because I put this on a regular plate where there's that little, there's always that little indentation. That's where my dome is sitting right now. So it's kind of just a way to trick the eye and make it feel like your cake is leveled and that you know, got rid of any of the doming. But it's just all delicious cake. I think it's okay if it domes a little, right? Look at this spoon icing. What? So when I spoon ice, what I love about it so much is it just looks like waves of icing. So then at the very end, I come back in and add a little bit more wherever I need it. Like that edge needs a little bit more. Make it look kind of flat. A little bit more. Get that little guy. Oh, hello friends. Hello, you gorgeous little chocolate cake. Look at that. Wow, you're so pretty. You're so pretty. Of course, you're gonna clean up the edge before you give this to somebody or serve this, right? Like that little piece, you're gonna clean up that little part. Y'all, that frosting is so good. And now we're just gonna finish it with a little bit of sprinkles, right? Just a little bit of sprinkles. You can sprinkle all over the edge. If you want to do the edges though, you need to let it get colder, right? Throw it in your refrigerator, let the edges get all cold so that you could touch it and roll the edges in sprinkles. But I just want it to be classic on the top. All right, I want a beautiful cut. That happens because you wipe your knife and you put it in hot water each time. Oh, hello. Look at that. Like, isn't it just so friendly? And you can see, like, the center is wider because we didn't cut it off and make it perfect, but it just looks like such a fun homemade cake. This would, again, be delicious in a 9x13, right? Just like you had when you were a kid. A little 9x13, a little sheet cake action. Oh my God, I can't wait to eat this. You guys, I cannot wait to eat this. Oh my God. She's so pretty. Fork, please. Cake, please. Look at her, trying to roll up. It's a very, I mean, she's a big a big old bite. You all, that's too big of a one bite. I was gonna try and go for it, but I need to do it in pieces. I think my fork stopped working. Wow. Wow. Ooh, yum. Yum. It's so moist. It's intensely moist, you guys. You're gonna love it. Any buttercream works with it because the cake itself is chocolatey, but it's not overwhelming. Like, it's almost light. I know that sounds crazy, especially given how like dark it is, but it really feels like light and fluffy and airy, but then like, oh, you like chocolate? No problem. There's chocolate everywhere here. It freezes beautifully. Forgot to say that earlier. And it's not hard. It's like such a delight to make. I'm gonna finish eating this. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time on Gussied Up, where we turn traditional recipes into modern masterpieces with just a couple of quick updates. Knocked it out of the park.